What if NC State football wins out? What if they lose out? What if they finish 2-2? Three different schools of thought, three different answers.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's Wednesday sponsor is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton had a brilliant idea for this Wednesday episode. It is a what-if series. We have three different scenarios for the last four games of the season. The first one, what if NC State wins out? They finish 4-0, well, technically 5-0 in their last five games. What if they lose out and they drop the last four games on the schedule? Or what if they split the difference and go 2-2? Kenton, we're going to start here in our first segment. What if NC State actually does win the remaining games on the schedule? Now, a couple weeks ago, I said this in a hot take. I'm really starting to believe they actually will. And some of the post-game comments made by Hollywood Smothers and Davin Vann coming out of that Cal win on the road, that has become the new goal for this team. They understand that the bigger goals are off the table, but what they can do is rally the troops and end this season on a high note. That would be finishing 5-0 in your last five. So what if they actually do this? Would this change your opinion at all on the grand scheme of things?
Not really. Only because I would be proud of this team for fighting back. I would be proud of this team for not giving in, not sinking, not dying out. But we've seen this story before.
Yeah.
We've seen this story before, and we saw this story when we had lower expectations. So, in the locker room, hey, forget about me. Don't worry about what a guy like me is saying. I'm just an old, washed-up guy with bad tendencies, okay? I am not the guy to be listening to in this moment. But if you are asking me from the outside perspective, if you're asking me as a member of the media, if you're asking me, hey, Ken, if you were the head coach or if this is your team, are you excited about that? I'm excited for the future, yes. But does it change anything about this current present season? No. Because if we came into this season, do you remember what we said about an 8-win season for this team?
It'd be a failure.
It'd be a failure. It'd be a disappointment. So even if we got to 9, right? Even if we win the last 4 or last 5 and win a bowl game, okay? Does 9 really change it for you? Not me. I don't really, I will say this. What it does change for me at that point, some people can't keep their jobs depending on how things go. Some folks can keep their jobs because I'm a big believer in, hey, you can't be so rigid in like, hey, I'm calling for blood, I'm calling for firing, that you can't acknowledge when a coach has turned it around and gotten a unit rolling at a high clip. But that's pretty much it. I don't really see too much happening for me where I say, oh, pack one out. So now, like those memes where it says the world if, and then insert cool thing here, like, right, where it's like the world if NC State's campus had free parking. And then it's like the super futuristic thing with flying cars and all that. I don't necessarily see that happening. I think it would be a nice gesture. I think it would be a really, really worthwhile endeavor to kind of say, hey, this is why you don't give up on fandom. But for me personally, based on the expectations coming into the season, it doesn't change much. Again, it does give me a ton of excitement going into next season, which I was going to have anyway.
Yeah, what if Brennan Armstrong didn't throw that pick in the end zone against Louisville last year? Yes, we have seen a very similar story, and that was last year. They finished 5-0 in their last 5 games. And my intrigue in this season's team and potentially repeating that is how the energy around the program felt after doing that. Because the way that they finished was a large reason why the NIL poured into the program and the transfer additions poured into the program. And some of the guys even flipped their commitments looking at Keenan Jackson. That was a large reason he chose to come to NC State over the Dirty Foot Club. The way that they had rerouted the season, rallied around each other, and then completely stamped it on UNC's forehead to finish that season. That was a large part of why there was so much buzz coming into 2024. So for me, that is the biggest thing that I'm interested in moving forward. Because yes, if they finish 8-4, it's still a failure. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's still true now. It's going to feel good. Yeah, sure. You beat Stanford, you beat Duke, you beat Georgia Tech, and then you finish putting William in retirement. That's going to feel awesome. But on the grand scheme of
that's going to feel so good. Retiring William in that way. Also, never mind. We'll save it for the week of. But just know, I have a lot more riding on this game than most people, and I'm not talking financials. So please don't let me down when it comes time to play the Dirty Foot Club. But we'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Somebody's got a bet riding on that one. But anyway, no, it's going to feel great if we are able to do that. But again, my interest is the way that would inject energy into this program at such a crucial time. I'd have to double check on the new transfer portal windows. I think they shortened it if I'm not mistaken. But December and January, that is when your portal moves are being made. So for NC State to be put up on a pedestal, so to speak, and say, this program has a lot of energy right now. They found a way to rally around each other. What are they doing in Raleigh? Because that's exactly what you saw last year. So if they finish 8-4, that's the most important part. Retaining some of the young talent that you want to keep here. A lot of folks early in the season like, well, KC looks mighty checked out. Wouldn't be surprised if he's gone next year. If you finish 8-4, would that not increase your chances of keeping him? I would certainly think so, especially because his brother is also committed to the program. It's little things like that. So finishing 8-4, don't really care about that. But what I do care about is the team playing together, building together, growing together, and then taking that into the offseason. That is by far the most important part they have to play for from here on out.
I think you raised a very important point that I had not considered with the, retaining the talent.
Yeah.
Because that's a point that I had not thought about at a high level. And you know what? That's extremely important. That, to me, is the most important part about this what if period. Because if you can retain all of the players that are currently on this roster, again, we talk about how good this team could be next year. And I get it. Perennial team of next year talk. I understand.
WTNY.
I hear you. We're the Watney team of the year. But with that being said, next year, you're looking at year 2 Bailey, year 2 Smothers, year 3 KC. Jolie's probably going to the NFL, but you're looking at year 2 Noah Rogers, year 4 Wesley Grimes. You're looking at year 2 Keenan Jackson, year 2 Terrell Anderson. You're looking at some serious weapons in terms of who you got. And mind you, we haven't even mentioned Jonathan Paylor. Mm-hmm. We haven't even mentioned Kendrick Raphael. We haven't even mentioned some of the guys that we know will be major contributors if they decide to come back next year. So, I mean, that to me would be the biggest part of winning out. Keeping those guys happy and keeping those guys with the belief that, you know what, we can get it done here. We can win a championship here. We can accomplish all the things we want to accomplish in Raleigh.
That buzz and belief around the program, I cannot emphasize enough how important it truly is. Because, yes, not only is it important for the portal, but it's also important for retaining your own roster, and especially NIL as well. More people are more inclined to give more when they see success on the field. That's really all there is to it. So for NC State to win out, that's the most important domino effect that they should be playing for. And based on what I've heard from the players, that message seems to be received. I have to imagine you're going to see a lot of energy from them in this Stanford game. And I can't wait to see if that is true, because that would tell me a lot on how they may or may not fare in these last 4 games. So what if NC State finishes technically 5-0 to finish the season? Let us know down in the comments. After a quick ad read, we're going to jump into the complete opposite. What if NC State loses out? This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Wednesday sponsor is Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks, and it makes getting tickets to your favorite live events easier than ever before. Gametime Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on seats, and you won't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation of Gametime Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, you name it, they got it. Toggling the all-in pricing feature on the app will show your total upfront, so you receive 0 surprises at checkout. And as always, you get that panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect upon arrival. Their lowest price guarantee will guarantee that you get 110% of the difference if you find the same seat and same row for less on another website. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? You already know. It's game time. Middle portion of our Wednesday show. Now time to flip the script and talk about the complete opposite of segment one. What if NC State loses out and loses the final 4 games on the schedule? Well, number one, it would be extremely, and I do mean extremely, disappointing. Stanford, not that great of a football team. And I know folks are very quick to say, didn't you say that about Wake Forest? Yes, and it's still true. And yes, we also lost to them, okay? Stanford, not good. Stanford just lost to Wake Forest. That was all the way out in Palo Alto. Stanford is struggling this year. They have really one good player on offense who we're going to touch on Thursday. They have a dual threat quarterback. That's really about it. Their defense is not good. The offense stalls in the mud if Io Manor can't get going. They're just not that great of a football team. If you lose to Stanford, that's going to feel even worse than losing to Wake Forest and or Syracuse. The same can be said about the other 3, Duke, Georgia Tech, and the Dirty Foot Club. Obviously, you don't want to lose any of those games. They're going to sting extremely, extremely bad. But the most important part, which is, again, the exact opposite of what we just talked about, roster retention gets very much in jeopardy. If you finish 4-8 in a season that you talked about an ACC championship and 10 wins, I would not be surprised if you see a mass exodus. That's the current state of college football that we're living in right now. The transfer portal, it's easier than ever to experience hardship and look at the grass as greener somewhere else. That's just how things are nowadays. So if NC State is to finish 4-8, I think you very well could see massive roster turnover.
I wouldn't just expect massive roster turnover. I would expect massive coaching turnover as well. Yeah. I don't think people quite understand how bad Stanford is. Stanford is currently in the middle of a 5-game losing streak. That 5-game losing streak, they have been outscored 187 to 62.
Whew.
And mind you, they put up 24 last game. Last game, that was a 3-point spread. That was their best outing of that group. If you want to go before that, 160 teams were averaging 40 points exactly. 160 to 38. I am not saying this lightly, and I know what you're thinking. Stanford probably played a bunch of world beaters in that time. They played Clemson. Okay, sure, I'll give you a world beater. They played Notre Dame. Sure, I'll give you a world beater. SMU, are they world beaters? They're a good team. They're a good team. I'm not sure if I call them world beaters. But even if I did, I'll give you those 3. Virginia Tech. The Hokies. The Hokies. Now, don't get me wrong. The Hokies are not a terrible team by any stretch of the imagination. They're not a bad team. They beat Marshall by 17 points. They beat Old Dominion by 20. They beat Stanford by 24. That's their largest margin of victory all year. It came against Stanford. So that if you lose to that team and then go on to lose out, that to me, at that point in time, you do need to talk about the culture and something being rotten. You do need to talk about something not passing the smell test because, again, it's not just about Stanford. But if you start off this stretch with a loss here for homecoming, you have no pride about yourself. And heads need to roll. And y'all know me. I'm not quick to call for coaches' heads. I know I may be in the minority here. I still think Anai is a pretty good offensive coordinator. I think so. I think so. Hey, I really do. With that in mind, I look at this situation and I say to myself, if you win 4 games with this talent, there had to be a lot of coaching malpractice going around. Heads need to roll. There need to be multiple coaches, position coaches, all that. Hey, man, it's been great. It's been fun, but it's been real. It's been fun. It ain't been real fun. Go on about your way. Go on to wherever you got to go.
It's interesting because I think even if we win out, I think you can still have conversations about coaching turnover based on what we've seen so far, because the offense has not been good enough. Any way you want to slice it, it simply has not been good enough. And I will agree with you on, I think that Robert and I has the capability to be a great offensive coordinator. In fact, we saw it at the end of last season. And I think that inspires a little bit of hope, because you did see the way that we finished last season, the way he kind of reworked the offense, prioritized getting the ball into Casey's hands, and he found success the whole rest of the way. So perhaps coming out of the bye week, he can do a very similar thing. But before this bye week, it's been very hit or miss all season long. Some of the scheming of the offense has not made much sense at some points. Some of the quarterback play, you kind of take what you can get with the true freshman, and I fully understand that. But just overall, I mean, when you look over the course of 8 games that we've played, there's only been one time that we've had a rusher over 100 yards. There's only been one time we've had a receiver over 100 yards. And guess what? It was in the same game, the first game of the year against Western Carolina. Neither one of those things has happened again the entire rest of the season. That is mind-boggling. Whether that is by design or just complete malpractice, I think it's probably the latter. You can't have that with the amount of talent you have on this roster. So I think whether you win out or lose out, but especially if you lose out, there's probably going to be some very difficult conversations coming up for this team in the offseason. And maybe there won't be complete roster turnover. Maybe there will. But I think I won't be surprised to see at least a couple coaches be turned over.
I think losing that much doesn't make for difficult conversations. I think it makes those conversations easy.
Well, true,
I
yes.
think if you win out, I think those conversations become difficult. It's like, do we want to pull the trigger? Are we sure? If you can only muster up 4 wins with what I believe is a wide receiver group that has 3 guys, at minimum, 3 guys. Really, if you include all the pass catchers, 4, maybe 5 that I could see not only playing on Sunday, I think they have 4 to 5 guys that will get more than just a cup of coffee in the NFL. I really and truly do. If you can't get more than 4 wins with that group, yeah, don't worry about it, buddy. Hey, you don't know what to do, but I do. We're going to pay you all the money to never see you again. That's what we're going to do.
And something else, if you do find a way to lose out, and because I think you would actually have to find a way to lose out, you would kill off so much momentum that this program has built over the last 4 years. You talk about the low point of the Doran era was 2019. And yes, there was a lot of injuries, but you had some young quarterback play. You finished 4-8. It was just an unmitigated disaster. But what happened after that is they found a way to overachieve in 2020. And that kind of sparked, not rebellion. I don't know why I had rebellion on the brain, but this sparked like this new life into the program. And that's why in 2021, when I think they again overachieved, they won 9 games, you really felt like a wave coming. And then hopefully you thought 2022 would be the year. Leary gets hurt, kind of goes off the rails, but you rally around each other. You still find a way to win 8 games with 4 different quarterbacks. And that spilled over into 2023, although still disappointing. You also found another way to rally around each other, win 9 games, and then that spilled over into 2024. If you go 4-8, you have to basically start all the way back over from what feels like square one, in my opinion. If you do lose a lot of talent to the portal, you'd have to either rely on extremely young guys or basically take what you can get from the portal. That sounds bad, but you're going to get better talent when you're winning football games. That's not rocket science. So if you lose out, you would forfeit up so much momentum that you've just spent the last 4 to 5 years building. It would be extremely tough to dig yourself back out of that again.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, what more do you have to say? What more is there to say other than to send a senior or seniors like Davin Van, like Aiden White and company out on that note?
Yeah.
Disgraceful.
And then coming up next, we're going to round out our Wednesday episode with the last portion of our What If series. What if NC State football splits the Final Four and finishes 2-2 and 6-6 overall? We'll touch more on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple of minutes here of our Wednesday show. Time for part 3 of our What If series. What if NC State football finishes 2-2 in their last 4 games? That would give them an overall record of 6-6. Well, it would also be extremely disappointing. You would make a bowl, but quite frankly, It'd be a bowl that not many of us would care much about. However, there is valuable experience for a lot of young guys to get in that said bowl. That's great. But finishing 6-6, it kind of connects to what we just talked about, finishing 4-8. It's just such a low point when your expectations were sky high to miss the mark that badly. It's just like, oh my gosh, like how on earth did this team with this coaching staff, with this roster, miss the mark that badly? And so then the internal questions and probably the heat on some chairs within the coaching staff, it would heat up a little bit. Like we just talked about, there'd be some difficult conversations, or perhaps in some instances, easy conversations, because simply put, changes would have to be made. 6-6 and 4-8, I don't really feel like there's much difference between the two. Of course, one you play in a bowl, one you don't. It's just overall, it's an abject failure. That's really all there is to it. I don't know if there'd be a huge difference in roster retention between 6-6 or 4-8, because they kind of feel the exact same. It's just a failure. Kenton, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are simple. When I look at this group and I say, hey, what does 6-6 mean to you? What does 6-6 look like with this team to you? I say to myself, okay, where do your 2 losses come from? Is there any combination of 2 losses you would feel good about? You say you beat Stanford, beat the Dirty Foot Club, but you lose to Duke and Georgia Tech. Do you feel good about that? Not really.
No.
Let me tell you why. I have for a very long time said that, you know what? I get that Doran does, not show up for big games and all that in some regards. The Doran coach teams don't. But also a lot of those big games are against teams that spend a lot more than us. If you go 2-2 on this season, that would mean you have losses to the following teams: Tennessee, Clemson, Wake Forest, Syracuse, and some combination of Stanford, Duke, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, right? So that means that you have 2 more losses. Now, I put the fingers like this intentionally, okay? I did my fingers on 2 separate hands for a reason. Clemson and Tennessee spend a lot more than NC State. I'll give you those 2 losses. I'll call it a wash. We move forward from there. That means you lost to 4 teams, or at least 4 teams that spend as much or less than you. That means you lost to 4 teams that are in your realm of spending. That means you lost to teams whose NIL collectives are not booming and bunking in a way that you're just like, hey, we can't keep up with that Newhouse money at Syracuse. I'll tell you what, we can't keep up with that M&T money at Wake Forest. We just can't. There's nothing we can do. Stop it. Stop it. Those losses are directly on the shoulders of players and coaches in the way that, again, ones where it's like, hey, they spent $8 million on a quarterback, man. Yeah, you're gonna have a tough time. It's a difference. It's a difference. So I really would be disappointed by 6-6 as well. The silver lining of 6-6 would be you would end up in a terrible bowl game against a team that is probably worse than you. Probably a group of 5 team that's like, oh, they're decent this year. Good for them.
And something else. So hypothetically, let's say we do finish 6-6 here. We'll say Wake Forest, Syracuse, and then some combination of Stanford, Duke, Georgia Tech, and the Dirty Foot Club. So that's 6 schools I just listed. Of those 6, do any of those, do you feel like they have a better coaching staff that's head coach and coordinators than NC State? I would say no. I don't think so. Wake Forest? No. Syracuse? Possibly. I don't think right now, no, but maybe in the future, if Fran Brown continues to cook up there in Syracuse, I don't know yet. So I would say no. Stanford? Certainly not. Duke? No, I don't think so. Manny Diaz, that offense that we've seen from Duke this year? Certainly not. Georgia Tech? I think Georgia Tech's probably the closest to being a yes. I still think that's no. And then William, he has 1 foot out the door, possibly 2 feet out the door. He's like not even the coach anymore.
The weekend at Bernie situation over there in old Chapel Hill.
So obviously that's a no as well. So you'd be looking at 4 losses to those 6 schools where you have a better coaching staff than all 6 of them. Now let's go roster. Wake Forest, Syracuse, Stanford, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Dirty Foot Club. Do any of those 6 schools have a better roster, you feel, than NC State? I would also say no. Maybe that's biased. Maybe I have my red-tinted glasses on. I believe that to be true. I do. Maybe quarterbacks, Kyle McCord better than CJ Bailey. Might have felt like that a week ago. I don't know, based on what we saw last Thursday in Pittsburgh. But yeah, I'd probably give McCord the edge there. Anyone else? Malik Murphy? No. Whatever quarterback situation they have at Dirty Foot Club? No. Ashton Daniels for Stanford? Probably not. Haynes King, is he healthy? I don't know.
I was about to say, if Haynes King is healthy, he's your guy. If Pyron,
No.
Bailey's better than Pyron. Yeah, Bailey's better.
Bachmeier at Wake Forest? No. Okay. So even with CJ Bailey being a true freshman, he still has a leg up on 5 of those 6 schools? The rest of the offense, are any of those offenses more talented than NC State? All right, I'll stop ranting here. You get my point. That's how disappointing it would feel if you finished 6-6. You lost to such inferior talent, not only once or twice, but 4 times with this roster and this coaching staff in this season with all the momentum you had coming into it. That is such a hollow, mind-numbing, painstakingly bad feeling, okay?
Yeah.
So that's why some mediocre run-of-the-mill bowl, would I watch? Obviously, yes, I would watch. It's our job to watch, in fact. So, yes, I'd watch. But would I care about winning that bowl? Yes, I want to win that bowl. But would I actually care? No.
Hey, don't let them mess around and learn some quick lane. I might have to be there for the holidays. You know what I mean?
Depending on where the 6-6 bowl is, maybe we'll talk. But would it mean that much to the program? No, it just wouldn't. Outside of getting younger players on the field, there is value in that. It just wouldn't mean that much. So that's why some of these players coming out after that Cal game, Davin Vann and Hollywood Smothers in particular, they've set the new goal. We're winning out. We don't see any other scenario than us going 4-0. That's how it should be. Because anything less than that would be an even bigger disappointment than it already currently is. I've said it once. I've said it 4 times. I'll say it 5 right now. If they want it, they can absolutely go do it. But that is NC State versus NC State. It's on the plate if they want to eat it. But they got to choose to eat it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you play with your food, what's going to happen? Somebody else is going to eat it.
That'll do it for us here on Wednesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us your what ifs for all 3 of these scenarios. If NC State finishes 4-0, 0-4, or 2-2, let us know your thoughts on all 3 of those. Mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Thursday as we preview the Stanford Cardinal coming into Raleigh for our homecoming game. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.